Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffe Kennedy, author of epic fantasy romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Delicious. Full confession, it's actually my second for reasons. Today is Monday, July 29th, last podcast of July. Enjoying the beautiful weather here in Santa Fe. My garden, she flourishes. I have no good reason for being on my second cup of coffee now, except that I sat down to have my first cup of coffee and get the podcast queued up all ready to record. And then I just kind of went down a couple of rabbit holes. Um, Sat here and drank my coffee and tootled around talking to a couple of people. So it was bad and wrong, but also fun. I was talking with one gal that wanted a copy of Never the Roses, a book blogger, a lovely person. I won't out her because I don't know if she wants me to. I always feel like, when you send out ARCs, advanced review copies, or advanced reading copy to people, that you should always preserve their ability to not read it, to simply vanish and do nothing. Um, it's part of the bargain, right? So yeah, I won't out her as someone who has it. I've been sending out copies for the endorsement quotes, is what they are calling it. Um, yeah, endorsement quotes, which actually helps clarify the whole blurb thing, right? I think I've gone through it on here probably more than once. Like the difference between back cover copy being the description that's on the back of the book versus blurb being the thing that's on the front of the book saying, oh my God, this is the best book I ever read. Endorsement quote. So it's interesting. Tor is looking for quotes for both the bound galley for fall, like for October, which will then go out for another round of reviews, and then also for the final jacket. So if you are a podcast listener, which by default, if you've heard these words, you are. I suppose you could be a friend that was told. Anyway, if you want advanced review copy, ping me. You know where. You can do it on the socials, and or email me through the contact form on my website, and Assistant Corrine will find those. Let me know if you want those either now or later. I do have a lot of people, so don't feel any obligation. But like this gal that I was talking to on Instagram Instant Messenger, I mean, so many modes of communication, right? I told her she had heard about the book a while back. I think when I was talking about it at a Polycon, and she was like, "Oh my God, I want to read this." So, yeah, it's only if you are in that category. But of course, there would still be no onus. So let's see. I do have a lot of things to talk about today. All appearances to the contrary. One more thing on Never the Roses. I'm working on what is called a map scrap. Map scrap. This is also a new to me term. And I checked with a few of my other trad pub friends, traditionally published friends, and they had not heard the term map scrap either. They're putting a 2-page map into the book, and the map scrap is like me sketching out the map and putting it, sending it to them for the real artist to create the actual map from. So I think it's like map scrap. It's like, yep, just whatever you could sketch up, Jeffy, which is good because I have done my own maps before. In fact, let's do a little show and tell. Hang on. I kind of tripped as I started to sit back down in my chair and fell ungracefully into my chair. So when I did my maps for Kensington, I drew them myself. And So sorry if you're just on audio, but if you're on video, so like these are from the 12 Kingdoms books. Please excuse my chipped nails. I'm getting them done today. And so I drew my own map. And that one looks pretty good, I think. You could see them in the books if you're not on video. But here's another set of the maps. Mostly to give people a sense of distance. Now, the problem with Never the Roses, and we have talked about that they need to be somewhat artistic maps because I'm trying to decide if it's spoilery to say. Well, is it? Is it spoilery? A lot of the book is about Onira, who is a sorceress who works through dreams. Her magic is through the dream. And so there is a dreamlike feel to it, and there's a geographical disconnect because of the dream. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. So the map can't be too precise, right? So I'm going to sketch the map, but I'm also sketching a couple of the places. And so I'm going to show this on here, but otherwise this will never see the light of day because, so I did not spend a lot of time drawing this because it's just a map scrap, right? But this is Onira's house. Looks pretty cool, huh? At least it gives the feel for it. So you saw it here and you saw it here only. Yeah, for those of you who are not on video, I'll tell you that it shows, it's supposed to be her white-walled house, which is on a cliff by the sea, and it shows some of her garden, and it shows her tower with the dome on top, and the steps leading down to the pink pebbled beach, and the mountains rising behind. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so yeah, that's what I did. I got to sit in the grape arbor yesterday afternoon and do some drawing, which is just like a fun different thing. I mean, every once in a while I have to pause and sort of take stock. is that the right word? Remind myself what a great freaking job I have, right? That this is like my job, and I'd forgotten because we had emailed last week about this while I was on this trip, and I was very absorbed with taking care of my mom. And I am aware, and I thank all of you for reminding me, and my friends remind me that I have a lot on my plate, and it's been very stressful. Between taking care of my mom and taking care of David, and dealing with syphilis stuff, which is like, why do I volunteer to do this again? And just I'm sure there's other things, my friends who have cancer and life, but anyway, we'd emailed back and forth about this map scrap, and I had said, well, how about by Monday having the idea that I might like sit by the pool and draw and sketch and so forth. Reader, this did not happen. And by the way, I know I said I was offline last week. These are the emails that come to my phone. So it was all phone emailing because it was important. So anyway, when was it? Yesterday morning, I think, or Friday evening. I'm sorry, Saturday evening. God, who am I? I haven't even talked about my weekend. Saturday, I felt really run down. I did very little all day. I didn't even go to yoga. I basically sat and read all day. And so I think it was at the end of the day where I was like, oh, I said I would get this map scrap done by Monday. Reader, it is not done yet, but at least I started on it. Yeah. So, but isn't that great that that's like, compared to some of the other things I need to get done, this was an awesome thing that I needed to get done. And it, is so easy to focus on those stress points in our lives, right? And it's interesting to me that the greatest stress point in my life right now, the thing that is occupying my attention is SIFWA business, which is this completely optional thing, right? And in fact, some of my friends are like, why don't you resign? You should just walk away. Why are you even doing this? And it's like, oh, but that's not who I am. I don't, well, I don't believe in resigning when things get difficult, first of all. And I know that that happens on a lot of volunteer boards, and people feel like they're making a statement by doing that. And it's not helping the organization, which is why I volunteered in the first place. So anyway, that's where I'm at with things. Um, so it was a restorative weekend. It was good. I'm getting my feet back under me. On Friday, I began revising Reluctant Wizard from the beginning so I can finish it off. I think I'll make it on time. And none of these are the things that I had things written down to talk about. One thing I want to mention, and then I'll segue back around here, is that I read this great book called Three Martini Afternoons at the Ritz. And it's paper. I was actually reading on paper by Gail Crowther. And the subtitle is The Rebellion of Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton. And highly recommend this book. I should try to get online and do a book rec. It was fascinating about the overlap between Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton. A lot of things I hadn't known. Uh, Both of them were amazing poets, women who broke the mold at a time when it was not easy to do so. They have this apparently common similarity in that they both committed suicide. Sylvia Plath when she was 30, Anne Sexton when she was 46. And the author takes great pains to note that this should not be treated as a commonality, more that they both struggled. And but she has this one line in there where she talks about their loneliness and speculates if they had had a greater support network, would that have made a difference for them? It had a little freeze there. I can't tell if it like freezes on your end, and of course I'm not thorough enough to go back and check. Uh, would that have made a difference for their lives? I mean, obviously, she goes through in pretty exhaustive detail the mental health care they got and how truly shitty it was. Uh, but it struck me that line about loneliness and connection. And I think that it's very easy for us to decry the bad things about the internet today. Uh, to There are bad things about the internet today, and it does have this influence on our lives and our politics that we need to fix. But I think one of the things that gets lost in that conversation is before the internet, that there was a lot of loneliness. The odds of finding other people that you grokked, that were like you and had the same um, feelings about life as you, it was so much harder before the internet. And like my best friends today, I can pretty much trace to having met them in various ways through the internet. Uh, like even local bestie Megan, I first talked to her on Twitter. So, yeah, that sense of loneliness. And, I love when you all send me comments that you listen along. Uh, it's meaningful. And it's meaningful in a way that's, we have to make it meaningful, right? I've heard people talking about since Kamala Harris declared and is endorsed as the next president of the United States, that people have been hope scrolling instead of doom scrolling. And I think that's a huge piece of it, that we have to be there to put hopeful, positive things on the internet, to connect with people in the way we want to. Um, One of the things I've been thinking about and having interesting conversations with a few people is taking what other people say seriously. Um, and it's not always a good thing. One very good friend of mine was talking about, and she and I are the same this way, that when somebody tells us, and actually local bestie Megan said the same thing, that we take what other people say very seriously. And so a mild example of this is, and yet we'll all do this, if somebody says, I'd love to eat at this restaurant this week, um, that we will all take that as a serious thing, and we will like engage the machine to like make this happen for this person, especially if it's someone we're close to. We'll be like, well, could we do it Tuesday? Could we do it Wednesday? Oh, but they don't take reservations. Oh, they're closed. We'll start going into this whole thing. Whereas the other person, for them, it may have been just this transient thought, and they like totally forget about it. So then when we come back, like, good dogs with the bone, with the casket of rum, saying, I have saved us. I have finally managed to get us reservations on Thursday at the restaurant you're dying to go to. And they'll be like, oh, I forgot about that. I can't make it Thursday. And we put all of this labor, emotional labor, into what other people say that doesn't necessarily have any meaning. We don't need to do that. In fact, it's better for us if we don't. And that's been a big thing for me, is finding ways to not take what other people say to me so very seriously. Um, and I was talking with someone else. So, sort of like when you begin thinking about a particular thing, how it all starts coming in, right? And the universe is like, here is this message for you. Like people complaining to me about things, like how seriously do I take that? I was talking with someone else whose literal job is to take, here in Santa Fe at the state capitol, to take complaint phone calls. And they're usually people who are angry and upset about the political situation. And that's their job, is to take the calls. And I said, well, that sounds really draining. And they said, well, it's not so bad once you learn to be patient and not absorb their anger and aggression, that it's not about you. You're just taking down the information for them. And so that's been really meaningful for me. It's like, well, when somebody complains, it's, yeah, they're upset about the situation, and maybe you're the one that they come to, but it's not about you in particular. And you don't need to absorb that as marching orders. So, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. Also, in terms of like people who are emotionally unbalanced, in particular, we have to find ways to not absorb what they're saying. And, Trump is a great example of this. Like the stuff he says, we have to take it seriously, because I do know people who are like, oh, I don't think he means everything he says. And it's like, when he says that if you vote for him this year, then you won't have to vote ever again, we should take that very seriously. And yes, he literally said that. But you also don't have to absorb all of this emotional imbalance. And it's the same with, I'm trying to decide, I might get in trouble for this, but David's ex-wife, for many, many years, I mean, she would send us these, very angry messages and call me sometimes and say horrible, hateful things to me. And it took me time to realize that I didn't have to listen to that I don't have to read the letters. I don't have to read the angry emails that people send to me. I can register, oh, this person is upset about this thing, but you don't have to absorb what people want you to absorb. I saw a great thing on the internet where somebody was complaining about being blocked, and saying, well, you shouldn't block people or mute people on the internet just because you don't agree with their opinion. And somebody had the great remind or come back to that, saying, well, um, I'm probably messing this up now, but the comeback was, uh, maybe because you hate them, something like that. But the comeback was, I don't hate the garbage or disagree with it. I take it out because it smells, and I don't want to smell that. So on that note, I think that's a great way to live life. Maybe you have to deal with the garbage. You have to acknowledge that garbage exists and know where the garbage goes and where it comes from and manage the garbage. But you don't have to sit there and smell it. On that note, I hope you all have a fabulous week. If you have other advice along these lines, I would love to hear it. And I will talk to you all on Friday. You all take care. Bye bye.